All right. Hi, everybody. So, Annie, just Annie, this time, I think you all received Jeremy's email saying that he has accepted a new position as the rules coordinator for ODE. So, he is now on the fourth floor working with our government and legal affairs team, which is super exciting, but I already miss him. So it's just me. But thank you so much for joining me and each other. I know that things have been interesting. That's an understatement for sure. And we're all just finding our way through. So thank you so much for all the good work you're doing. Thank you for continuing to serve your students. Today, we are just going to go through a few things, just some quick introduction. I'd love to have people go around and say who's on the phone at some point. That would be nice just to hear who's here. We're going to give you some updates. Make sure that you're aware of all of the updates that have been issued from ODE. I would love to hear updates from you all in the community, how you're doing, what you're doing. We're going to talk a little bit about the private alt ed program application and the extension of that deadline for the due date, and then have time for questions. And I do want to say up front that so much information has been coming out of ODE, and I'm sure you all have been bombarded. Not to mention just just trying to juggle everything within your own programs and students and districts and all of the news and just living in the world right now. It's a lot. So we really, at the ODE, we really wanted to make sure that we have a consistent message, that the message is the same from everybody. And so what you'll hear today is some of probably what you've already heard, or if you've read the guidance. So there won't be anything new today. And it's possible that I may not be able to answer all of your questions today. I will do my best. But just please know that I can't, there are some things that I can't speculate about anything because I want to make sure that I'm giving you the correct information. So if I can't answer your question, I will absolutely take it down and get back to you. And really, one of my two goals for holding this webinar today, one is just to make sure that you have access to all of the guidance, and two, just to hear from you and to hear how you're doing and to take your questions back so that I can make sure that I get those answered. So let's jump in. If folks can maybe just go around and say who's here and where you are in the state and maybe your role. I can call on people if that makes sense, except some of you are caller 1, 2, 3. So maybe if folks can just kind of popcorn.
Yeah, some of it's like right. I know I'm on a phone call and I'm on screen because nothing would work that way. So, but I can hear you on the phone.
Okay, terrific. And who's that?
There's probably a few of us out there.
Yes. So go ahead and introduce yourself.
Me, who's talking?
Yeah.
I'm Heather Chatham from Samara Learning Center in Central Oregon.
Thanks, Heather.
Hi, I'm Cheryl from Looking Glass Riverfront School in Eugene.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Hi, Annie. This is Serena from YDD.
Oh, hi, Serena. Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. How are you?
I'm well. How are you? Next.
Scott Cooper, Alternative Youth Activities, South Coast, Coos Bay.
Hey, Scott.
Hi, Jessica Burback. I'm the Education Director at Portland Youth Builders here in Portland.
Hey, Jess.
I'm Jen Schock from Wellsprings Friends School in Eugene.
Hey, Jen.
Thanks, Jen.
Hey, Cheryl. Hi,
Cheryl.
Serena.
I'm Jeff Laff, Fiesta College Manager at Portland Community College.
Hey, Jeff.
I'm Erica Stavis. I'm the Program Director for Contracted Alternative Schools with Portland Public Schools.
Hi, Erica.
Hi.
I'm Ajay Hooda. I'm with the Center for High School Success. I support a couple of the alternative schools in Portland Public in my role and was an alternative school principal out in Centennial for many years.
Hi, Ajay. Thanks for joining us.
I'm Jenny Gillette. Erica just forwarded me this link. I'm a new PPS instructional specialist for the CBOs that contract with PPS.
Thanks for being here, Jenny.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, this is Cord Bucher with the Youth Development Division.
Hey, Cord.
Hey, Cord.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Cord.
We've got a few more. Mary, you still there? Okay. Well, we'll just go ahead and jump back in then. Thanks, everyone. In thinking about these webinars, and this one in particular, really, I want this to be a vehicle for you to connect with each other and learn from each other and hear from each other. So the more people we get on the line, the better. So thank you again for being here. Okay, so we're going to jump in to the COVID-19 updates from ODE. And I'm guessing that most of you have already seen all of this, but just in case, I want to make sure that you know where this information is, that if you haven't seen it, that you can find it. So, let me see. So can you all see that? Making sure that I'm showing the right screen. Okay, terrific. So here is the COVID-19 website for ODE, and as you can see, it has a great deal of information. So I want to go specifically to the information for school leaders. So Graduation Pathways 2020. And this is where all of the distance learning for all information is. And as we've added guidance, we've added it down here underneath the toolkit. So for example, under the Distance Learning for All toolkit, there's an overview of the guidelines, and then it's broken up into different pieces. Learning capacity framework, the distance planning tool. These are hopefully things that you've seen before April 13th, when Distance Learning for All started. The timeline, summary document, and there are summary documents for each piece of guidance. So if all you have time for is to digest a little like 2-pager, those are great places to start. Graduation pathways. So we have comprehensive school counseling plans, timelines, another summary document, and within section 5, grades 9 to 11. So this was the most recent guidance that came out. We're currently working on K through 8, which should be released soon. But within the section 5, there's the more information about credit and everything, again, that has come out so far. So there are family and educator resources. And then in addition to all the guidance, there is a comprehensive question, basically an FAQ section. So if you are not getting your questions answered there, under the FAQ, you will see all of these different categories. And we're adding categories as we get more and more questions. So, and then there's a category down here for newest questions. So if you have not been to these websites, these pages, and looked at this guidance, I highly recommend that you take a look. There's been a great deal of work and thought and collaboration in developing this. We've worked cross-agency. We've worked with other states. We've worked with other state agencies. We've worked with many of you, and really have wanted to make sure that as we are in this time of extended school closure, that care, connection, and continuity of learning continue. So that is the bulk of what I wanted to share for from the ODE side of things. And as I said, I know that there'll probably be a lot of questions, and if we can keep those until the end, that would be great, so that I can make sure that I just gather all of them together. So let's see. As I said, K through 8 guidance should be coming out soon. I think that's kind of all for right now, but we're responding to questions and issues as they arise. I don't know how many of you pay attention to the state board meetings, but in the last state board meeting last week, there were, we brought rule changes for a lot of Division 22. So there are a lot of rules there that are being suspended just for this year. Yeah, so there's a lot of information. So I think now I'd like to turn it over to you all and just hear from you about how you're reaching your students, where the challenges are with distance learning for all, where you're finding success, and also if you have plans for celebrations and what you're thinking about celebrating your folks who are graduating or completing their GED, although I know that's a little tricky right now as well. But I'd love to hear from you all.
Jen here.
Yeah.
So we are super, super grateful to be the small, awesome organization that we are, because our close relationships with our students provided for by our side has really made this transition a lot easier. Each of our advisors only has 12 advisees, so it's a really manageable caseload in staying in really good communication with them, even if it's over formats that maybe the kids weren't familiar with, like Zoom and stuff before this. A lot of them hadn't checked their email every single day, but that is increasingly more a part of what it's like to be a grown-up. Mm-hmm. So there's been a lot of strides made in that, and definitely our small size has helped us navigate this. With those close relationships, though, having to lose the in-person graduation most likely has been a really hard call to make. But what we did is, in addition to like our Facebook page for the school, we have one for our current students. And so we are collecting photos to do a kind of digital yearbook. And for our graduation ceremonies, we always had one staff member give like a 5 to 10 minute speech about a student. And what we're going to do is we're going to all do that for all the students and then compile them in a video, and they'll be available through the Facebook and on our webpage, and the kids will have them. So that's our best success that we've come up with in kind of keeping everyone connected and things like that.
That's great. Thank you. Other folks want to talk about how you're reaching your students? How difficult has that been? Is it getting easier? Has the transition, I know that I spoke with several of you right around the 13th of March, in preparation for our Alt Ed Summit, which of course never happened. which I was really sad about. But I know that some of you that week had already shifted to an online model or were looking ahead to that. So I'm curious how the transition
Well, this is John Bouchard, COIC. I can tell you what we've been up to for the last couple of weeks. And then I'll conclude with it's a totally off the wall idea we have for graduation that may or may not work. So we've been madly calling, texting, emailing, and actually logging all of our communications. And so since April 1st, we've got about 1,200 one-way communications and probably closer to 650 two-way communications. That really hasn't translated to a great deal of student engagement. And I'll share an amusing anecdote of of a conversation that occurred at our dinner table last night. I have 2 high school girls, and I asked them and my wife, how many times a week do you think, somebody should be called to get anything done? And they said, oh, well, I haven't been called yet in 2.5 weeks. and so are you more likely to do work if you're called? Well, sometimes. And then Nancy, my wife, said, well, if they call me, then I'll yell at them and then they'll get something done. I said, oh, okay. So what do you think? Do you think maybe 1 phone call a week is good? And they said, oh, absolutely. 1 would really do the trick. And I said, well, what do you think about 2 or 3 phone calls a day? And they responded, well, if that would get the job done, well, that would be great. But, with our population, with the challenges that they have, and not to engage parents who will respond to the 1 phone call a week, let alone 3 a day, that pretty much characterizes our challenge. In terms of graduation, because Ben Lapine's not going to have a graduation. They're still working out, whether to have a parade or do something virtually. But if things really quiet down and the situation's over, we're going to try to schedule something first right before 4th of July at the River House. And we anticipate that it would, in the past we got, 250 kids show up for our graduation. So we're thinking that maybe we'd even get standing room only, health provisions notwithstanding, if we could pull it off in probably sometime in July.
That'd be great.
Hi, this is Heather from Samara Learning Center.
Yeah, hi, Heather.
And hi, and we're having some similar issues. We're trying to get kids to actually join the classes when they're supposed to. I'm not putting as much stuff online for them to do independent, which is because the kids I'm working with are with me for the school because they're having trouble independently being successful in school, with ADHD and high functioning autism and different things. So we're working on those skills. So we also need the social emotional component. And so I'm trying to do some things one-on-one with them online, some things working with them independently, and then sometimes giving group opportunities, which is a challenge at times, but it gives a lot of teachable moments about appropriateness of language and sharing pictures and things. But it gives a lot of great opportunity, and it's getting better and better as we're getting structure and understanding and expectations laid down.
Thank you. Jen, did you want to say more about your question?
Yeah, sure. So I've read the guidance a couple times and tried to use my best brain to understand it. And so overall, it seems like basically if seniors were on track to graduate, they get awarded that remaining trimester of credit, kind of no questions asked.
Correct.
The guidance for 9th through 11th grade was something along the lines of, if they still participate in this term, then they automatically get that full credit. But there's not really a guideline for participation. And while I would love all of my students to be doing 3 hours of guided learning and 2 hours of independent study and 1 hour of welfare development each day, you know, that they aren't going to be earning full credit by hitting all of those marks every day. And so I'm curious what other folks are doing to kind of, what does it mean to participate for the rest of the year, especially given that a lot of our population is living below the poverty line, you know, other at-promise student groups.
Mm-hmm. So what are other folks doing?
Well, my understanding is that we're not giving them grades or we're just giving them passes.
Correct.
There's no grading.
Correct.
Yeah. That's where you're at, Jen, right?
Yeah, so we're doing everything pass, no pass.
Right.
And
all in the districts to, you know, be really flexible. If they engage and they do participate somewhat, it's a pass. You know, it's not the same grading system. It's not the same expectations.
yeah, I guess I'm just trying to figure out what the low end benchmark for participation is. Since they've taken attendance off the table, what I think typically had been considered attendance for online schools before was two-way interactions per week. And so I, in my, you know, with my magic wand, have transferred that over to being our metric of being engaged. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're actually doing a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
And
right.
Which is, I'm fine with, honestly. Like, I am here to help kids, and if kids stay engaged in all of this at all, I want to help them advance towards a high school diploma, because that's the least of what they deserve in all of this. But I just kind of wanted to make sure that maybe I didn't need to set the bar higher than that, or that I hadn't misunderstood that.
I think what we're getting from the local districts here in Lane County, that's how you described it is the way it should be. You don't have to make it more rigorous.
Great. I kind of have a follow-up question on that, but it may only matter to, I guess, high schools. I have some students that are exceeding that expectation of that 3 hours of guided learning a day, plus a ton of independent study. Is there any kind of idea, or I don't expect explicit guidance from the state, but curious how other educators are thinking about possibly awarding more than just the default credit for students that are really excelling right now?
So my understanding of the guidance currently is that we're asking for there not to be additional, like there's no, usually there's, you know, the state sets the floor and then districts can set the ceiling. And my understanding is that we've set the ceiling. And I can check into that though, Jen, and get back to you.
Yeah, I'd be really curious to find out exactly what that ceiling is.
Okay. Yep, I will find out. Okay. How about other folks? How are you doing? How are your students doing? Have you been able to reach everybody? What sort of challenges are you running into?
I guess I'll go next. So we deal with credit recovery We have a small school. We're also dealing with residential treatment kids. So we've got multiple things going on from different situations. The classrooms that are running 6 periods are kind of in a good spot because those kids will be able to get those 6 credits as long as they're putting an effort. My classrooms that are running credit recovery, that one's kind of similar, but my main school, we run 2 to 3 classes at a time. They're focused on that. So we're kind of, they got caught in a weird situation. But on the more holistic terms, and somebody had spoken about poverty, we have a large homeless population, and we actually house a lot of our students. Because of that housing, we were doing food share, small food bank, if you will, which we have now opened up our school, and we are giving out about 1,000, 2,000 pounds of food a week. So it started with our students, and then we just started opening it up. But that's really, it has done a lot for communication with our parents. A lot of times our problems with our students are more of a generational poverty thing, but having the parents come to the school so much has really opened up a lot of opportunities. So I'm going to talk about the positives that are coming out of this and whatnot, and we'll kind of stick with that. So that's my share for today.
That's great, Scott. Thank you.
I think one of the funniest things that has come out of this is that as just a classroom teacher, one of the biggest challenges is to try to get kids off their phone and stay focused on learning. And now their phone is one of the most important ways in which they are accessing learning. And it'll be interesting to see how formal education recognizes that as a tool that's going to be important moving forward.
Yep, absolutely.
One of the things that was discussed across the network of schools that I support that contract with Portland Public Schools was thinking, and this is not, I mean, all of our schools across the network for the most part have had really good connection with students, you know, before this time, making transition into this form of learning, I would say easier in terms of having updated contact information, actually like having to track down students generally so they knew where to find them and how to find them, right, which is a plus. I think that one of the things that's come up that I would love to for this group to maybe think about or engage in is thinking about implications for next year in terms of our partnering districts and whatever that relationship looks like, what the need for alternative services might look like, and trying to project strategically. And Jeff Laff from PCC here, who's on the line, kind of brought up some salient points around us being prepared to meet the need, because there will most likely be a larger number of students who are disconnected for a variety of reasons come fall. And so it would be interesting to think through that statewide and what re-engagement might look like. And I know Serena's on the line, I'm sure has more to, you know, say about that as well, but I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, good point. Serena or Cord, do either of you want to jump in?
Hi, this is Cord. I can maybe just respond. I'll actually try to get my video going here, so I'm not just a disembodied voice. Hi. You know, I think this is actually a big question on our minds, and what I think will probably remain a question for a bit is, what is the long-term impact in terms of students who aren't currently, you know, served by the, you know, alternative education system, or who haven't disconnected, but what does this disruption mean in terms of the long-term impact on young people who are maybe at risk of disconnecting, and this is a tipping point, or young people who are destabilized by this, and what's the capacity for that? I mean, yeah, it's a huge question. I mean, it's something we're part of why you know, Serena and I joined the call, was just to kind of get a sense of both the challenges folks are experiencing right now, and also what you know, if there is any sense of what this portends for the future. But I kind of understand that it might be too soon, especially there's a long way between now and August and September, and a lot of mystery as to what to expect in terms of, you know, how long this goes on and what that means. So I guess, you know, like, I'd love to hear what people think, because I would expect this will increase the number of young people who are accessing alternative education, you know, because and make it challenging also for those organizations, because there's this now probably a 5-month gap in terms of like physical contact, you know, where they haven't been in the building in this long. And I know that for recruitment and retention, that in-person contact is super important. So I wonder what this means.
Yeah, and I would say for GED, especially for a lot of our students who are, you know, attempting to complete through a GED, who are not even able to actually take the test. But I would also say that there might be an opportunity for ODE. They've been doing, I think, such a great job in pleading to districts to account for all the students and to have a lot of considerations around culture, community, and those kinds of specific, you know, particular groups of students, that it would be great if down the line ODE would consider making some recommendations to district to consider you know, their alternative placements and work in unison with those programs to learn and share about best practice for connecting with students, since a lot of expertise lies in those institutions.
Yep, that's a great idea.
Well, I have two different kind of concerns to follow up on what Cord was saying. One is that we are already having students who were close to finishing their GED tests who are now not able to finish. So we have to, I mean, they would have been able to test if the testing centers weren't closed in the last few weeks. And so now the question is like, how do we engage them? How do we keep their skills going when their prime motivation of completing tests is now, you know, on hold for who knows how long? And then that group is also growing with the students who we are currently serving this term who are not able to test. And in addition to that subgroup, what we realized is of all the students that we are losing ourselves right now, they are all talking about wanting to come back when this opportunity ends, or the you know, the hiatus ends, right? So you have your normal students or normal population of entries that would come in the fall. You have the increase of the ones we know that we've lost, and then we have the increase of any ones from the larger system around us that are going to be displaced and then seeking us out. And as an entity that plans way ahead, within the next several weeks, if I don't have classrooms for any of those things, then I don't necessarily have the capacity built to sustain what could be 2.5 times my normal influx. So I'm really kind of concerned on what that would mean, especially when there are budget cuts looming, that people might not be able to pay for those students to come at the same time. You know, that really puts us, I think, in a precarious situation of how we handle the uncertain future going into the fall.
It'll be an interesting experiment to see all the districts around the state all of a sudden consider all of the needs of students who are credit deficient and in need of specialized or discrete needs and services, which they already do. But it seems, like I said, once again, it's an opportunity for these programs to shine and show what we've always been doing and how flexible we've been to meet these particular needs. So, thanks,
I was going to ask more about special education also with the IEP, because we had some IEPs planned when all this happened, and they haven't been rescheduled, or, you know, how do we pursue that?
So IEP meetings and IEP services are supposed to continue.
Yeah.
And
I'll reach out to them too.
Right.
I just wasn't sure, because I know a lot of the kids, I mean, in alternative schools also are under 504 and IEPs. And
yeah, I would reach out to the districts.
Yeah.
I have somewhat the opposite concern of the opportunity that you stated, where if we are doing more remote learning and come the fall, you know, my school is looking at hybridized models and things like that. But what's the difference between an alternative education online access and a district one if all districts are forced to kind of move a little bit more closely to our models?
Yeah, good question.
I'd like to piggyback on that. What we're finding is fascinating, I think, because historically we would not allow our students to take online GED courses because we felt that we were not supporting them with the development of our coaching model and our support services, and that there were some issues about attendance and other things. But now that we have gone to this model, my coaches are like, well, why can't I support someone who is studying their GED online and do video meetings like I am with all of my students currently, which actually brings up to us is that we could actually serve a much wider population because of our getting over our fear of engaging this method of delivery. And so that's actually kind of an interesting development from all of this that we didn't necessarily consider or foresee.
Mm-hmm. I think we're going to look at instruction delivery a lot differently after all of this and what's possible.
I feel that the problem isn't the instruction delivery. I mean, we have got great learning management system. It's engagement, and that's what we do with alternative education. Yeah. You re-engage on a personal level. My master's is in distant education, and one of the papers I wrote was about that transactional distance. The funny thing about this situation is we all have relationships with our students already, so we're able to overcome those transactional distance so quickly. And truthfully, I don't know how. A lot of our students are feeling very bored. Our engagement level is probably up in some aspects because they're bored. Well, that's just my situation.
I think we've had some of that too. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
So yeah, we've had, I think, a lot of that too with our existing students and those relationships because we have something to build on. But we definitely have, some concerns. We're hoping at least that, come the fall, we'll be able to have at least, whether it's splitting the kids by days or something, that we'll be able to have some kind of in-person interaction to help build those relationships again. But yeah, my concern is how can we kind of show that a population that has typically not engaged, that we can have the resources and really be tenacious enough to engage them if they're coming in as new students, that we don't have this rapport built with already.
I found even with the rapport, which has helped a lot, because I think you're right, it makes a big difference. But I've had to almost build it up again to parts of it because especially really what we ended up doing is it was about a 2.5 week off spring break and then coming back in transition. Transition's hard already, and then trying to get them engaged at home. So and a lot of our students, like a lot of your guys' students, have learned helplessness and difficulty in persevering because of their challenges throughout their school career. So trying to re-engage them has been an issue. So I've had to kind of back off on some of the academics that we were making progress on and having to reestablish and reconnect to be able to work on it, as well as, academics are extremely important, but one of our philosophies at least is that also it's the success attributes, the idea of persevering and learning how to be proactive and self-aware and all those components that help us in long term are having to get creatively implemented and reconnected with them.
Hi, this is Kathy. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, go ahead, Kathy.
Yes, hello.
Okay, good.
Uh-oh.
Now, I know the testing centers are closed. So what are people, I mean, I know it, and I hear that it's a dilemma, but does anyone have a solution for that?
The test center at U of O is open and is testing right now.
Who's open, John?
University of Oregon in Eugene.
Oh, but you have to go to Eugene
You
to,
have to go to Eugene. So we have someone going Friday.
okay. That's really interesting because our high desert, our high desert ESD received a HEP grant in the fall, and that's for migrant workers to obtain their GEDs. And we just got, we are a little behind the timeline that we had outlined, but we just got a notice of deficiency from the U.S. Department of Education because we haven't shown that we tested enough kids. So, or they're not enough students. And we're really in a dilemma because we didn't know what to, I mean, we have students in the pipeline ready to test, and now we're getting this deficiency from the feds, but the testing centers aren't open. So I was just curious.
Kathy, I've been speaking with Adrienne Oakes, the state GED test administrator, and we realized that in the midst of all of this cascade of information, there hadn't been any guidance that went out about GED testing and GED prep. So we've actually drafted something, and it should come out hopefully next week or late this week. But what I can tell you is that the GEDTS testing service has been looking into the possibility of online proctored tests to try to figure out how to get folks testing. They floated a couple of other ideas. We don't have anything certain so far, but they are recognizing the need and they are trying to respond to it. And I believe that there are other GED testing centers open. Adrienne mentioned that it changes quite frequently. So maybe one will be open for a little while and then close, and another one will open for a little while. But the one at the University of Oregon has been the one that's consistently open.
And John, are you taking like a van of students up to U of O to take the test?
No.
Take tests?
No.
No?
It's case by case.
Yeah.
Individual cases, and they're driving themselves.
They're driving themselves. Okay.
We couldn't. I mean, I can't figure any other way to do it and maintain social distancing.
Right. Oh, that's so true. J-Bar J, which is one of our private alternative schools down here or not down here, over here in Central Oregon, they do have a testing center and they're still open. Their students and teachers and faculty administration are on site every day. And yesterday I emailed their administration to see if we could take our HEP students over to their testing center, and they're not allowed. It's just the adjudicated youth program, and nobody from the outside is allowed, even though they have the capacity to do it. They're just not able to break the administrative rules right now.
Other challenges or concerns or bright spots or other ways that you're looking at graduation?
Annie, I just want to
Okay, Heather?
second the,
Yeah, okay. No, please go ahead.
the concern about GED testing. And again, like Jeff said, we had a lot of students that are 1 or 2 tests away. And that PYB is still planning to provide programming is currently right now focused on getting students resources to be able to access remote programming and just resources in general to support them, making sure that students have food, a safety plan if they need it, how all that stuff first, and that we're also looking at enrollment differently. PYB is planning to normally would take the month of July off, but isn't going to, with the hopes that maybe we can come back to face-to-face programming or limited face-to-face programming, perhaps GED testing, but just we're really trying to be flexible and agile to work with students without any other interruption, even if it's remotely continuing through summer. And we're also looking at ways in which we can enroll students online, which I think, as folks mentioned, we're benefiting from the fact that we already have strong relationships with the students we're currently serving, and what that would look like to build relationship with students in an online world. And right now we don't have any graduation plans, so it's great to hear what other folks are planning to do remotely. But yeah, I think students being able to GED test would be really helpful.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Jess.
I have a somewhat boring financial question, but in the guidance about graduating seniors, there's the kids that were on track and then the kids that were mostly on track. Mm-hmm. And the mostly on track deadline is by August 31st. Is there any kind of plan in place to address ADMs with that kind of extended schedule? I know that our district contracts don't really allow for that, but I was wondering if ODE might have something to say about it.
I don't know, but I can take that question to our school finance people.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right, other questions?
I wondered if it was possible to, just because we have so many people across the state, that are involved with so many districts, is it okay to talk about billing for a second? And just I'm just curious what's happening in other districts around billing and the month of March, and what happened across the state with how districts kind of decided to work with private alternatives around that.
Sure, go ahead.
Somebody tell me what they did.
I've got multiple contracts in different ways. Some of them are, one set price, other ones are per student per day. I have not seen no money has come in yet. No district has told me that they're not going to pay me or that they are going to pay me. And we're talking about last quarter's billings, let alone the next one coming up. So I'm just kind of holding my breath, serving my students, and assuming if I do the right thing, it's going to work out. So I'm interested to hear how it's working out for other people.
We've had a more affirmative response from several of our districts. We have gotten a yes, we will pay you. It's a little weird with the no longer tracking attendance thing, but they did agree to paying us for at least last quarter. And it sounds like I had one district tell me that even though students are graduating, that they still have the same graduation date because we're providing transitional services of June 13th or whatever, so that we can also continue to bill for them during this time. And that under the ODE stuff that, ADMs were going to be paid out based on, time of closure, that's sort of what we're looking at from most of our districts.
Annie, this is Krita. I was just going to ask, and I have a follow-up that I can take later, but just with regard to ADMs and dates of payments, because I've heard a couple different things. But just as far as PPS, what we're doing is we're amending each of our contracts just to be clear about evaluation outcomes and just the format of instruction. So we're going to amend, we're kind of erring on the safe side. So we'll just have just a really brief amendment in each of our contracts. And so there's no question that we're proceeding with all of our CBOs through the year like we typically would.
That's great. That's great. In fact, that reminds me, Karina, one of the Division 22 rules that was suspended for this year was if district evaluations haven't happened by the time school starts in the fall, everyone can still operate. So the deadline for the private alternative application was moved to May 29th.
Right.
And if an evaluation, if the districts have not evaluated the programs up until that point, that's fine. In rule, it says that in order for districts to contract with a private alt ed program or school, they have to have been evaluated the year prior, and we just recognize that that might not be possible. So I just wanted to let everybody know that if you haven't yet had your district evaluations, you obviously will not have them by May 29th. Not to worry about it. Those can happen later.
Is there like a essential on the changes to the Division 22, the suspensions? Is there like essential place to read that to find out what those all are, or how do you get that info?
Oh, that's a good question. I will look on the COVID-19 website to see if there's something in there about suspended rules. It just happened last week at the school board, so I'm not sure where that is right now. But I'll find that and I'll get that. And Karina, did you say you had a follow-up question or another?
I do have a question. So one of the things that it looks like the guidance around billing talked about ADMW on 12/31, but then I've heard other people say it's the date of closure. So I just want to get maybe, and if you've covered this because I jumped in late, like we don't have to spend time on it now if you guys have already talked about it, but I was just curious if we just need to know what the date is that for our billing purposes.
My understanding was second quarter, so December 31. I think is that.
That's what I've heard also, but then I was just curious if is that like final, or is there any considerations, or is that final?
I'll check, but what my understanding was, it was December, and then everything would be reconciled at the end of May. Was my understanding, but I will check and get back to you.
Okay, that'd be great. Thanks.
Okay.
I have a quick comment on evaluation. And John Bouchard is on the call here too, but we were notified by the Crook County School District, in which we have two private alternative programs, well, one and then one charter school, that they're having virtual school board meetings, online school board meetings, and we're still set to go on May 21st or May 16th or something. But anyway, they want us to give our report, and the school board's going to hopefully renew the contracts. So I thought that was interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the state board is happening virtually as well. So I think that folks are still trying to keep things moving as much as possible. Speaking of, it's 4 o'clock. And there's another go-to meeting on this account starting at 4. I just received an email about that. So I apologize for cutting us short right now, but this is our hour. Thank you again so much for serving students, for doing all of the work that you are, for checking in. I will find answers to the questions that came up, and I'll just send those out to everyone. So again, thanks. It's nice to see faces.
Thank you.
Who have web cameras. Be well, everyone. Be safe. And we will hopefully see you again soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.